You guys asked for it, so here it is. This is everything you need to know in order to level up a sorceress, transition to the melee build, and get it through the early game. But first, if you like my content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm also live right now at twitch.tv/screamhard. Now let's get into it. So when you first make your character, you're going to be starting with a sorceress. And in the very first area, you're going to be getting a skill called Spark. You're going to put Spark on, and you're going to put it into your right click. You can technically use these on any hotkey you want, but this is what feels the most comfortable to me. Spark's going to be your main way to kill groups of enemies, and you're going to pair that with your first skill gem that you get, which will be Flame Wall. Once you have Flame Wall, you're going to be able to cast down a Flame Wall, and then your Spark can be cast through it to gain additional fire damage. And you can spam this over and over and over. Now your wall doesn't last very long, which is why your first support gem is going to go into Persistence for your Flame Wall. That's going to allow you to have the Flame Wall up longer for the duration of a fight. Now your next skill gem is going to be going into Ember Fusillade. This skill allows you to cast and get a little ball of fire next to you, and after a delay it shoots off. And you can cast this several times, up to 7 I believe, and then let it fly off. It's going to be like a little machine gun. That's going to be your main source of single target damage, which is why your next 2 support gems are going to be Concentrated Effect and Considered Casting. That's going to make our Ember Fusillade hit extremely hard. Now that's bossing out of the way. But let's go back to our previous ones and get even better AoE clear. So our next gem is going to be Fortress, and this is going to make it so our Flame Wall casts in a circle around us. And you can actually cast it off away from you as well, so it doesn't have to be around you. But I like to cast it on top of myself, and then I cast my Spark, and we're spamming it through and killing everything around us. And if you're trying to kite enemies, you can cast it in front of yourself and then spam your Sparks behind you. Finally, if you get more support gems, you can get Arcane Tempo for Spark, and you can also get Pierce for Spark. This should be able to carry you all the way through the early game until at least level 23. At level 23, you should be able to get your Leaf Slam and start transitioning to the melee build if you choose to. Alternatively, you could keep running this setup all the way up to level 52 when you get Hammer of the Gods. But if you transition at level 23, you're going to be using a skill called Perfect Strike in order to do your single target damage. So it's going to be an additional thing you'll have to learn, and then you're not going to use it once you get Hammer of the Gods. So it's up to you to decide which way you want to go. Now the gear in the early game doesn't really matter too much. These are just random items that I happen to pick up. And for your offhand, you can go with a focus or you can go for a shield. But you don't even have to run a one-handed weapon. You could also run a staff. But I think I would probably prefer a wand and a shield in the early game setup, just for the extra layer of survivability. Now for your Sorc's passive tree, you're going to want to follow this. So we're going to be getting a little bit of energy shield in the early game. We're getting some mana regen, some spell damage, and some additional fire damage and lightning damage. Also a chance to ignite and shock. We're going to be getting a little bit of fire penetration and some energy shield recharge rate. And if you don't feel like you need the survivability at all, you can skip these points on the side here and just go for straight up spell damage through the middle here. Once you've gotten this done, you could put more points in this general area to try and increase your power, or you can go out to the side and grab strength nodes while working towards the other build. Now, while you can technically transition to the melee build at level 23 when you get your Leap Slam, I recommend possibly waiting till at least level 26. The reason for that is because in our passive tree, you can see that I've taken this route here, and we've just barely gotten our offensive stance. Getting offensive stance is pretty important because not only are we getting our block chance through here, but we're also getting 57% damage. That alone is going to be our increase to damage at this point in the game. Alternatively, if you don't mind respecking pretty hard, you can work your way down this way and pick up some of these nodes here, like Smash. For our gear, the only thing we really have to do is to change our wand to a one-handed mace. Other than that, most of the rest of the stuff is going to be about the same. Obviously, you can optimize by getting more physical damage, and you're going to have to make sure that you're meeting all your stat requirements. Now with our skills, I'm going to tell you how it works. So, at this point in the game, we're going to be using Leap Slam with Overpower and Holy Descent. I'm only going to show you gameplay with 2 gems in each skill so that you know what you're actually going to be at, because the additional slots are added using currency. But if you do have currency, I recommend using it on Perfect Strike first. So for Leap Slam, we're doing Overpower and Holy Descent. This is going to allow us to get the stun buildup we need, while also giving us some healing. We'll use the Leap Slam, and once you see the little white orb on enemies, that's when you know it's time to Bone Shatter. Now with Bone Shatter, we're doing Impact Shockwave, which is very important. We're also doing Magnified Effect, just for more AoE size. So again, we're leaf slamming, and then we're bone shattering into them. If you jump onto enemies and they're knocked down right away, just pull out the overpowered gem. That means you're stunning them all the way. The goal is not to fully stun them. The goal is to get the white orb. And if you're not getting enough in order to get the white orb, you can pull out Holy Descent and go for a damage gem like Brutality. So the main way to clear groups of enemies is to leap slam and bone shatter. Now, what about if we run into a boss or a rare mob? That's when we're going to be using Perfect Strike. So we've actually got Armor Breaker and Perfect Strike, and we're going to be using these together. Now, initially, when you only have 2 slots, it's not going to matter as much for the Armor Breaker part. So with 2, you just need to time your perfect timing window, and the Searing Flame is going to increase the ignite. And if you don't know, Perfect Strike always ignites if you get your perfect timing window. For Perfect Strike, we hold down the button, and then we let go as soon as we see the little flash. So there, it was too early. That was the perfect timing right there. Again, you're looking for that flash and instantly letting go. Now, once we do have our 3rd slot and we've got the exploit weakness, we're going to want to armor break them first, which you can use this before you even get the 3rd slot, because doing additional physical damage is going to be perfectly fine. Not to mention, we've got a rage gem in here, which increases our damage as well. So again, we're hitting them with our armor breaker. It should be about 2 to 3 times before their armor's fully broken. And as soon as their armor breaks, hold down your Perfect Strike and let it go. Now, our other skills that we have here are Infernal Cry and Shield Charge. The Infernal Cry is another tool to buff your Perfect Strike. So in the middle of the combo I was just talking about, if you just did your armor breakers, you can now use your Infernal Cry. Then after using your Infernal Cry, you can use your Perfect Strike, and boom, you're going to do a ton of damage. And the gems in the Infernal Cry are Premeditation and Raging Cry. Now in the Shield Charge, we went with Martial Tempo for more movement speed and Stomping Ground. Shield Charge can actually be pretty strong in the early game, so if you're somebody who's leveling up with this and decided to skip the Sorc part altogether, definitely grab Shield Charge and throw some damage on there. You can drop a Brutality as well as the Stomping Ground, and you're going to be tearing it up. And let me show you what that looks like. You can see we have these little circles that appear behind us, but mostly we're using this for mobility. So where are you going from here? From here, your main things that you're trying to do is get to level 52, so you unlock your Hammer of the Gods, and you're also trying to get the Vertex Helm. This is a unique helm that's going to cut your requirements on your stuff in half. It's extremely useful, and it's the easiest way to get Giant's Blood to start working. Up until you have the Vertex, don't even bother using a 2-handed weapon. Now, if you don't know already, on Mobilytics, I've got multiple build variations, and I added these specifically to go with this video. You're starting with the levels 1 to 23 leveling. This is the Sorc setup, and I've got all the gems listed here. I also have the tree. Then you've got the 23 to Vertex and Hammer of the Gods setup, and this is going to be more of a full build setup that you can start working towards. After that, you're going to want to focus on the mid-game setup, and this is going to have the Vertex, and you can see that the passive skill tree here is much more filled out. But even this one has 27 points less than what is available. Then finally, we have the endgame setup. This version is the final setup that you're working towards. Now, I have Astramentus recommended here as the endgame choice. I don't even have this in my build. This is very, very, very expensive. But this takes away the issue of having to try and get enough stats to run the build. However, you can work around it because that's what I'm doing. So the trick I'm using to work around this is on my weapon. I'm getting reduced attribute requirements. As you can see, I already recommended it here. But the other step that I'm taking past that is I put cores in here that change the attribute requirements to intelligence. And if you already have a lot of dex requirements on your gear, you can do 1 intelligence and 1 dex. This will make it a lot easier to actually hit those things while still maintaining all of your gems and whatnot. But don't stress about it. If you absolutely have to, you can always run a nice one-handed weapon, or you can just run the easy setup for the mid game with the Vertex Helm. Alright, and I also recorded myself doing my trial of the Sekhemas for you guys. When you're going through, you're going to want to make sure you choose ones that are going to give you buffs, or at least not debuff you. So anything without a negative combat effect is going to be your best choice. You're also going to preferably want to go for anything that's going to give you more sacred water, and don't get baited by the keys. Now in this area, you're trying to defeat the ritual casters. Don't worry about the other enemies because they're going to die as soon as the ritual casters die. You should be able to perfect strike and kill them in one hit. Once you've killed both casters at the gate, those monsters are going to die and you can move to the next gate. Once you've completed all the gates, you're going to be done with this room. For the hourglass trials, you're just going to want to pull it and then run around. You don't have to fight anything. If you get close to an enemy and you feel like you might take damage, make sure you dodge roll past them. After the timer's up, you're done with the room and you can move on to the next one. Keep in mind that if you killed a rare mob, it would reduce the timer, but at this stage in the game, you're just going to have an easier time running around and avoiding them. In this room, you need to follow the little red lines, and you're going to be killing rare mobs. For this one, don't rush, and if they're small mobs, leaf slam onto them to prime them for stun, and bone shatter. That's going to do damage to the rare mob, and sometimes you can just straight up kill the rare mob. But once all the small mobs are out of the way and you don't have increased risk to take damage, it's very easy to just kite around the rare mob and use your perfect strike when you have a good opportunity. The perfect strike should kill them very quickly. Keep moving around until you find all the rare mobs, then once you've killed them, move to the next room. If there are any additional enemies left, you can just leave them behind. In the escape trial, after you click on the first death crystal, it's going to show you where the next ones are. You're going to want to use your shield charge to cover the distance quickly, and use the same tactic we used before where you dodge roll past any enemies. If there's any chance you're going to be blocked, or if there's a gap you can jump over, make sure you use your leap slam. And don't be too worried about the time because you have enough time to walk this entire thing. You don't even have to shield charge. The shield charge just makes it faster. Once you've cleared all the crystals, move on to the next level. Keep your eyes peeled for any merchants as you're moving through. Merchants can have extremely good buffs or remove afflictions from your character. This is where you use the sacred water that you found. However, if there's nothing beneficial, sacred water can be saved and you can get keys at the end. You'll also be able to purchase relics from the merchant that you can use for future runs. I got absolutely nothing useful in this run from the merchant, so if you get luckier than I did, you'll have a much easier time. Try and avoid gauntlet trials if you can, but if you happen to get one, this is how it works. You're going to go through and you're going to look for levers that are going to allow you to open the next areas. You'll mostly have to avoid traps, but there are enemies in between. Use the same tactics you used before on the enemies to kill them without taking damage. Play it safe and don't take risks. With the spike traps, don't be afraid to walk onto them after they pop out of the ground. You won't take any damage and you can just walk through them. There are also spots where you can hop over walls and save yourself some trouble. Keep moving through and avoiding the traps and hitting any additional levers. Once you've pressed all the required levers, you'll have an access to the exit. Make your way to the next floor. For the boss, as soon as he spawns, he's going to do 3 big blasts, getting increasingly bigger. Make sure you stand very far away. After he's done his blasts, move in and take your time rolling around him and hitting him from behind. Don't stand too close to him because he has AoE that can hit you behind if you're too close. You want to be directly behind his butt. Assuming you're a melee build, you're probably going to perfect strike him in order to do your damage. If you don't constantly miss your perfect strike like me, you'll kill him in no time. Once you've killed him, make your way into the final room. In this room, you can spend your keys on whatever chests you find useful. You can buy relics from the merchant that you can use for later runs. You can turn your sacred water in for more keys. And of course, grab your Ascendancy. Make sure if you're trying to do the melee Chronomancer, you do the Chronomancer Ascendancy. I'm choosing Stormweaver here because I already have a Chronomancer. And that's it. Hopefully I've covered everything well enough that you guys can follow it. But if you have any additional questions or comments, make sure you leave them below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'm live on Twitch right now at twitch.tv/screamheart. So I'll see you guys there. Have a good one. I'm outie.